Japan is in shock. Mourners are going to the scene of the crime to lay down flowers, to say prayers. And this afternoon, when Abe's body was brought back to his residence in central Tokyo, people lined the streets to pay their respects to such an influential figure in Japanese politics. Another shocking element is that gun crime is extremely rare in Japan. Guns are very strictly regulated. But in this case, the suspect, a 41-year-old male, used a homemade weapon. We don't entirely know his motive for this crime, but what he has told police is that he has a grudge against an unspecified religious organization that he believes Abe has ties to. According to the suspect, his mother became very attached to this organization and donated too much money, becoming bankrupt as a result. And so the suspect set out to kill Abe. What this case highlights, however, is a serious failure in security. And the head of the police force that was tasked with overseeing security for Abe on that day on the campaign trail has said he will investigate exactly what went wrong. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has very strongly condemned the shooting, but said that the upper house election scheduled for Sunday will go ahead as planned to demonstrate the strength of Japanese democracy. Phoebe Amoroso, Newsmax, Tokyo.
All right, joining us now to discuss the latest on Abe's assassination and more in the region is the author of The Coming Collapse of China, Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to have you with us. I want to start with your reaction and perhaps your reflections on not only Abe's assassination, but the type of leader he was.
Abe was a strong leader, and that resulted in a strong Japan, a Japan that moved much closer to the United States. You know, in the first years of this century, Abe proposed that the free societies of East Asia and North America work together. But Washington and others rejected him because they wanted to engage China. We would be living in a much safer world today if we had not rejected his ideas 20 years ago. This is a man who is critical to the defense of democracy. We have lost a giant.
A staff writer for The Atlantic wrote this: Abe is often described as a nationalist. He deserves to be remembered instead as one of the great internationalists of his era, the leading architect of collective security in the Indo-Pacific region. If we could pull that quote up right there. Throughout 4 U.S. presidencies, those of George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, Abe sought to secure Japan's position against China by building alliances and institutions. What's the lasting impact here that Abe's had on the region?
The lasting impact is the Quad security dialogue. That's the security arrangements among India, Australia, United States, and Japan. And that is a bulwark containing China from its more aggressive moves. The Quad needs to be closer together and work more as a security alliance. But that was Abe, and it's important. We are seeing other groupings in Asia that are now aligned against China, including AUKUS, which is the pact of the UK, Australia, and the United States. These are all outgrowths of Abe's thoughts from the first few years of this century.
I'm really glad you highlighted that. The fact that the former prime minister could be shot and killed at close range while giving a speech in broad daylight in a country with one of the world's lowest rates of gun crime has really, I think, is what has shocked a lot of people. From a security standpoint, what do you think will change moving forward?
I'm sure that Japanese politicians and officials are now going to be guarded much more closely. You know, in our country, of course, we look at those pictures from Nara and we say, how could they allow this? Well, you can allow it because you get lax, and you get lax because there's been long periods where there have been no violence against political figures. But we do know that in Japanese history, in the 20s and 30s, 3 Japanese prime ministers were assassinated. So that is something which now has changed because of the culture after World War II, but it could change again. And clearly, it needs to be more security in Japanese society.
Gordon, despite his death, Japanese voters are going to be heading to the polls on Sunday. What impact do you think his assassination is going to have on these parliamentary elections?
You would imagine that there would be sympathy for the candidates that Abe has backed in these elections for the upper house of the Diet. I'm concerned, though, going forward, because we know that China is trying to destabilize Japan, has always tried to do that, and is, I think, intensifying its efforts. We have seen social media postings throughout the Middle East immediately after the assassination, trying to make points for China. This is really dangerous because it shows that China's maliciousness and its willingness to go after Abe just in the moments after this horrific act.
Turning now to China, President Biden has said that he has not made a decision right now on whether to cut U.S. tariffs on imports from China and that he's reviewing those one at a time. While that decision could bring a lot of relief to American consumers, how would Beijing view this?
Beijing wants tariff relief because the most important thing is that the tariffs, when they were first put in place in 2018, convinced a number of factories that they had to reduce their China exposure. So we saw the starting of the onshoring. When Biden has talked about tariff relief for China, when he waived the tariffs on 24 months from 4 Southeast Asian nations, we saw the ending of these efforts to reshore. So this is not a good thing for us. And by the way, I don't think dropping the tariffs is going to have any effect on inflation, because we know that sellers don't drop their prices when their costs go down. They only drop their prices when demand goes down. And so I think that this is not going to have, the American consumer is not going to feel this at all.
Gordon Chang, it's always a pleasure to have you on with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kelmini.